Welcome back, everyone. It's Thursday, which means it's Heresy, or something like that. These intros are getting worse for Heresy Thursday. I think I've run out of ways to interchange those two words, so it's just becoming inane and stupid, like all of what I just said. Last week, we took a look at the Herald Consul, the Loyalist Herald Consul to be specific, and they teased the fact that we would see a traitor counterpart this week, which is exactly what we've got. And I have to admit, I'm not sure about this one. I'm not 100% on whether I like this or not. See, this is fine. This looks okay. It's a pretty good Space Marine model, right? But it's just not quite hitting the traitor spot for me. And I think a big reason for that is because not that long ago, we had a really good traitor model. Now, obviously, you can tell that he's a traitor because there's a massive Eye of Horus on the end of a stick. It's not rocket science, it's also not subtle. But the thing is, the rest of it feels relatively interchangeable, which isn't necessarily a bad thing all the time. But I feel like not that long ago, we reached a really, really good kind of midpoint, right? So, not that long ago, we got this guy, the Legion Overseer. Now, the traitor version right here feels like the middle ground between the traitor Marines of old and the Chaos Marines of not quite so old. This feels like something that's a bit darker, a little bit more corrupt, a little bit more edging towards Chaos Space Marine, right? And for me, this is a really good peak middle ground. It's not hugely overt. It's not completely, oh, well, this just looks like a Chaos Space Marine in the Horus Heresy. No, it looks like it's edging that way, but it's not quite reached it yet. And I really like that aesthetic, and I really like the way that they've done that. And as a result, this guy doesn't feel like it's hitting quite the same spot, especially since it's sort of, I'm not going to say these two are interchangeable. They're not. There is definitely an air of more like noble standing going on with the Loyalist version. But I think it's suffering from the same thing that the Loyalist version has, which is that it needs to be generic, and as such it doesn't really seem to fit anywhere. It fits everywhere, but in a relatively bland fashion. And I think that's the problem I'm having with this one. Like, yes, as they say, he's got a diabolical undercut. Yes, they do also have the symbol of his Legion's shame, but really, it's neither one thing nor the other. It's an okay generic Space Marine, but it just lacks like that impact. It's not like hitting me with anything. And I think that's one of the big problems that I've got with both this and the Loyalist one. Both of them are like, yeah, that's an okay Space Marine. Neither of them are like, oh hell yeah, this looks incredible. Which, despite being incredibly plain, the Overseer does hit that for me. So overall, the armour looks absolutely fine. I mean, I like the armour. It looks good. I do like the sort of hanging chains going on. It looks like we've got some like decorative chainmail. That adds a bit of personality. We do have the kind of spiky symbol going on the power pack there. Although that in and of itself, yes, it is a little maybe a little hint of chaosy going on. But then there's also similar things that happen on like Loyalist. Like if you look at the symbol under the Aquila on the shoulder pad there, you've got an arch with a bunch of spikes sticking out of it. So that in and of itself is not a definitively traitor thing, because we see similar stylings mirrored on Loyalist counterparts, right? The things actually hanging from this icon don't really differ from what you see on the Loyalist one. It is just the fact that it's got the Eye of Horus rather than an Imperium symbol. That's really the main difference. That's the main thing setting them apart. And that's kind of disappointing in a way. Especially since when you look at one of the big things that felt weird about the Loyalist one is the fact that, it is a generic Space Marine that is supposed to hold a deeply personal standard for each of the legions, and yet the standard is exactly the same, and the Space Marine is just an okay Space Marine. That problem doesn't go away with the Traitor Herald either. It's exactly the same, where so much of the different legions is so deeply personalised and customised that you end up kind of having a relatively bland middle ground so that it will kind of fit in everywhere whilst not really embodying any of them. And I think it's the same thing right here. I think it's the same issue that I'm having, along with the fact that we fairly recently had a really, really good traitor model that felt like it was starting to bridge the gap a little bit, but not in a way that was too extreme, not in a way that was too overt. And I'm not really getting that same feeling here. It does also really make me wonder, those little dangling shields, right? They've got the dangly shields hanging off the Eye of Horus. On the Loyalist one, there were the exact same, like, icons, those exact same decorations, but partway down the flagpole, whatever you want to call it. What specific impact or meaning do those have? Like, I actually want to know. This isn't me being facetious and be like, oh, why have they even put those there? They are clearly important enough to be on both Loyalist and Traitor like standards. What exactly, what are they? What do they mean? What are they for? What do they denote? Do they denote anything? Is it just that, well, we had them on the old one, we might as well put them on the new one? It kind of introduces a question that I don't know the answer to, but I would kind of like to know the answer to, whilst also fully accepting that it might be that there just isn't an answer. And if there isn't an answer, and if it's a case of, well, it just looks cool, I would have liked to see that be a little bit different as well, you know? There are little things about the armour I really like the big cable that's coming from the chest round to the back. That's kind of fun. The axe is cool. The axe is just cool. I like that axe. It's very brutal. It's very heavy. It's also, again, not like the sole kind of property of the Traitor Legions. I'm pretty sure the guy in the ridiculously chunky power armour has that axe from the last box, the Age of Darkness box. I'm pretty sure he had one very similar to this. So that's like it's not like only within the remit of the traitors to have something that looks like that. Overall, I mean, it's fine. It's okay. It's an alright Space Marine, and that's kind of the theme across both this and the Loyalist one. For both of them, I'm like, yeah, that's a Space Marine, alright. That's a Space Marine. He's holding a big stand. He's holding a big banner. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a guy. That is a guy in power armor. But I kind of want more. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be hugely complicated to give more. It doesn't need to be massively over the top. It doesn't need to be super busy. Although I will say, this one is busier than the other one. I feel like this one is busier. There's just a lot more gubbins going on. The Loyalist one felt a little bit plain in places, whereas this has kind of got around that by having all the detail from those chains. You've got the extra icons hanging down as well. There's a fair bit more going on, so visually it is a bit more interesting, but it's not sparking that instant, like, this looks class. It's not giving me that. So as they say, is the Dark Mirror to last Thursday's Paragon of Virtue, a thoroughbred villain. It just doesn't look like a thoroughbred villain, carrying the very symbol of his Legion Shaman, sporting a truly diabolical undercut, which is funny but has no bearing on anything. But who is he and what makes him so bad? It's a good question. I feel like the model should also do something to answer that question, but it doesn't. As the wars of the Horus Heresy consumed the galaxy, billions fought and died under the banners of warlords they had never even seen. Even among the legions of Astartes, near-religious fervour became common over artefacts supposedly touched by Primarch, War Master, or Regent. These were given to a favoured Legion Consul as a sign of authority and favour, and as a symbol of their dishonour. This insalubrious character, has a choice of heads and bears the Eye of Horus, a symbol both of the War Master's own Legion and of the traitor forces in general. That's fine. He also carries a vicious power axe to get stuck in during the melee. It really does feel like it boils down to, why is this what we say he is? Because we've said so, and he's got the Eye of Horus. And that's kind of it. But I don't know why. I don't know what I wanted. I don't know what I wanted. Especially since we already had the template, right? We already had the template from last week. So it was kind of probably always going to be similar in terms of execution, something that would fit in with everything, and as such wasn't really particularly exciting for anything. But at the same time, I don't know whether I wanted there to be like a little bit more, like maybe a bit more of a gruesome trophy here and there, perhaps something that really kind of shouts, yeah, this guy has got to be a bit of a wrong un to even have this like standard in the first place. And it feels like we're not really getting that from this. But at the same time, also having to balance that with not making it look super chaosy, right? Because this is the thing where it's that kind of, it's that movement, it's sliding towards chaos, but it's not full-on 40k Chaos Space Marines yet. It's still ostensibly Astartes as opposed to Chaos or Traitor, or like fully Chaos worshipping Astartes. It's not quite at that point during the Horus Heresy. It becomes that much later, where the armour is all spiky and horrible, and there's multiple people's faces plastered over their face and all that stuff. It's not at that level. It's not at that stage. So it is, I think, a bit of a challenge to make it so that they look distinctly different whilst also having to look relatively the same. But at the same time, especially with just these Herald Consuls full stop, it's a big undertaking to make something that has a unique standard for every legion, whilst also simultaneously only having one model for it to apply to a bunch of different legions that each have their own very distinct, very dissimilar styles. Yeah, you do have your basic guys in power armor, but there's also so much that is fully unique to each one, and it was always going to be a tough job. And I don't really I'm not thinking, oh yeah, I could have done way better or anything like that. I think it's an impossible brief. I think it's an impossible brief to have something that feels like it should be incredibly personal to each one, and yet have one model that should do the job for all of them, because it's kind of two conflicting angles, right? Really, this one just kind of feels like the other. It's fine. It's a decent looking Space Marine. It doesn't really hit me with that, oh yeah, I want this, or it's exciting to see this, or this feels like something that has just been really well put together. It feels kind of standard, which it kind of has to, but it also makes it a shame that it's kind of standard for the task that it's been given. So, yeah, it's fine. It's alright. So definitely Space Marine. Definitely Space Marine. Definitely carrying an Eye of Horus. That's kind of it, which is a little bit disappointing. Although I will admit, they do get a good number of bonus points for the sheer amount of chainmail, because chain on power armor, I'm just a sucker for that. So there are bonus points right there, but overall, it's fine. But you might think completely differently. So let me know what you think of that in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things. I'm going to be streaming in not quite 12 hours. Like 13 or 14 hours. Because it's the preview. It's the preview live at 5 a.m. So stick around for that. Most of you are going to be asleep. It's like 5 a.m. UK time and 9 p.m. like Pacific Standard Time. Who's that for? I don't know. We'll find out. And if I go live and 10 people are watching, then we'll have the answer. We'll have the answer. And the question, it'll just be no one. It was for no one. But I might see you there. I probably won't. I'll probably see you for the roundup video afterwards. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.